It's good to have you both. First of all, welcome to Raisina Middle East and here in Abu Dhabi, and welcome to Abu Dhabi as well. Ana Palacio, former Foreign Affairs Minister of Spain, and Brian Katulis, Senior Fellow for U.S. Foreign Policy at the Washington-based Middle East Institute think tank. Welcome both again.
Thanks for having us.
The big story today, the big topic, the big news is the return of Donald Trump to the White House and, of course, the impact of his foreign policy. The US president wasted no time. He started working so quickly, and he pledged to do what no other president had done before. Anna, I'll start with you. How does the return of President Trump to the White House change the global political landscape?
I think if we speak for the experts, we would say that it's the end of the Wilsonian thread of foreign policy of the United States. This idea that the United States wanted a world, they consider themselves the lightning city in the hill. If we speak for people, it's instant reward policy. So it's this idea that we call transactionalism. It's just, I take it, you give me, I take it. Well, and it doesn't go beyond to eventually the consequences in the long time or even in the medium time. I think that this is what has changed for the world. Now it's unpredictable. I would leave aside, but in this region and generally in the world, it's important. Liturgy, the form, formality, that's gone. Again, I think it's a matter of instant satisfaction, which is pretty much what his base, what citizens want to have show business politics, and within this show business politics, just these performances.
Brian, do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And I think President Trump's main modus operandi is to disrupt. He tries to be disruptive and unpredictable. And I think the real risk to global order is that I don't see necessarily he has a clear plan of what comes next. He wants to fracture institutions, including some of the institutions of national security in the United States government. He wants to be unconventional and gain leverage in this sort of way. But the challenge is that the world will actually then recreate itself and move in ways to try to balance against what Trump does. And we saw this in his first term. We saw it on economic policy and on other fronts. So for every action, there's going to be a reaction. And the central question in America right now is what will Trump do next? And no one knows. But I think the world, in many ways, is moving on and trying to reorder itself in anticipation of these unpredictable moves. He doesn't build coalitions. He does not build trust. And I think the problem with the model of simply disrupting is that if it doesn't have a clear alternative plan, if it's based on an economic nationalism and unilateralism, it's only going to get so far in this new global arena.
You wanted to add anything?
Yeah, no, just that, yes, I fully agree with you. And I think that international relations are based, Mr. Jaishankar said, we have to create friendships. Because it's even more than in our lives where we have other alternative networks to fall back in. International relations, you don't. So I fully agree that this instant policy that you just take a situation, you react or you act without taking into account what will be, what will happen, is important. But the problem is that the United States is still I wouldn't say the indispensable nation, this is a definition by Madeleine Albright, but the power of the United States is there. And of course, I think that we have to accept that all the mediations, for instance, in the Middle East, did not bear fruit. And what happened with the ceasefire in Gaza was the result of this unpredictability, of this hell will break loose if there is no agreement before inauguration. And this we have to take into account.
Speaking of this point specifically, Brian, what can we expect from Trump's approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? While we know that President Trump might have pressured Prime Minister Netanyahu to agree to a ceasefire with Hamas in Gaza.
Right.
But also, we know his policies are seen as favoring Israel. And we saw, for example, quote, the Gaza clean-out plan and the reversal of sanctions on settlements in the West Bank. What can we expect from his second term?
I think on the Middle East, it's still too early to tell, but the indications are that he will offer an even bigger blank check to Israel and the right-wing government in terms of what it wants to do than he has in the past. And it's not only those two actions or the statement that he made about clearing Gaza of all Palestinians and having them go to Jordan and Egypt, or the lifting of these very modest sanctions on settlers that the Biden administration has demonstrated. He's appointed Mike Huckabee as his nominee to be ambassador of Israel. Mike Huckabee is a political figure who essentially says there is no two-state solution. Yeah. So what I think Trump, whatever he does do, he's going to see the incoherence of his approach pretty quickly. Because if you listen to the Arab world and key Arab partners of the United States, they've been screaming for one main thing, which is a credible pathway to a two-state solution. Yeah. That sort of position is incompatible with the current Israeli government. And in my early read of this new Trump administration, it's incompatible with the team that Trump has so far put into place. So at this stage, I think what we can expect is that Trump will back Israel and its actions, wherever it may be, in Iran and in other places. And that's a pretty dangerous scenario, because if you're not listening to the Arab partners in particular, who are trying to drive positive change, you're probably moving the United States towards a pathway that's a road to nowhere, meaning that he's not going to achieve the thing that he wants most, which is an Israel-Saudi normalization. Seems very difficult for him to achieve that aspiration while denying the aspiration of the Palestinian people for basic dignity and sovereignty.
Anna, do you think Europe can influence the future or the establishment of a two-state solution?
Well, Europe has stood for the two-state solution, and we haven't moved from there. And I think that this is the only realistic solution. The rest will be non-solutions. As for Trump, he's so unpredictable that let's see what happens. It will depend on how he really values the Arab relationships, and in particular Saudi Arabia. And I think that nothing is written. If Trump was Trump, but with a classical background, I would agree fully with you that this will mean a blank check for Netanyahu. But Trump is not that. Trump is the instant. Tomorrow he may have another priority, and he may, of course, the United States is very difficult that they make a U-turn vis-a-vis Israel, but I'm not sure that we can predict that United States will stand through come hell or high water with Netanyahu, because it's not really Israel either. It's with Netanyahu and Netanyahu's government.
We can't predict, but I'll come back to you in a second. We'll move to Europe. That's the final question on the Middle East. Brian, I'd like to ask you to focus a bit on Iran. So the appointment of Steve Witkoff as Middle East envoy, does it signal that the U.S. president might be looking to pursue a broader diplomatic strategy, potentially including a new nuclear deal with Iran before considering other options?
It could, but it's still too early to tell, because even Trump himself was unclear about whether this Middle East envoy would have the Iran file. Though Trump in his first few days had said, I'd prefer to solve this issue of the Iran nuclear question peacefully. And it's clear, from me at least, people he's put into his Pentagon team, they don't want to do much in this part of the world. If you look at Trump's first term. Despite the action against Qasem Soleimani, for the most part, he sent very mixed signals and said, we need to pull out. His vice president, J.D. Vance, a week or two before the election, essentially said the Iran problem, we don't want another war. Israel and the Arab nations should figure out this issue and basically police them themselves. But I think one thing Trump should do in trying to wrestle with this problem and challenge of Iran is to work by, with, and through our Arab partners. These are countries that actually have relations with Tehran. And sometimes it's frosty. It's been a little bit warmer the last couple of years. Countries have reopened embassies and things like this. It would be wise for Trump to build some sort of regional framework in the way that the international community built the P5+1 to deal with nuclear negotiations that led to the 2015 nuclear deal. If Trump wants to pursue the path to diplomacy, and he might, it would be best to do this in close partnership, especially with some of our Arab allies, as well as Israel. And there's going to be big gaps between what Israel wants and what some of the Arab partners want.
And hawks in his circle also.
Yes.
I would highlight the potential influence of India. India is very high in Trump's priorities. And I think India can play a role in these areas as well, because I fully agree the priority for Trump is China. China, China, China. The rest is secondary. The rest, he wants to do it with tariffs, with threats, but not really engage. But I think that if Trump listens, and I doubt that Trump listens much, he listens to India right now, and you have seen this in many symbolic gestures.
Yeah, I know we discussed this before the session, so priority might be right now China, India, rather than the rest of the world. That doesn't mean the rest of the world is not important, but a relationship with India and China might come first.
Right, and that's just on the external relations. I wanted to stress also that Trump sees himself as elected mostly because of domestic policy concerns and things that have closer relations to the U.S. Right now, the U.S. is implementing under Trump a very aggressive anti-immigration policy, which actually I think will roil the United States and have an impact on its foreign relations in negative ways because of the unpredictability and how we already see this with Colombia. There was some dust up with Colombia that has been smoothed over for now. But I think the center of gravity is mostly on the economic and social cultural issues. And foreign affairs for Trump was not the thing that got him elected, but he will do things, I think, in ways that will disrupt the international system.
Well, for sure. I think that Trump cares. It's also surprising because he cannot be re-elected. But he really cares for those segments that elected him. And I think he likes to make statements on immigration, statements by doing things, not by being coherent with his campaign or whatever. No, he has this messianic, very strange messianic way in what he does. Here I am, I'm changing this, I'm changing the big problem. I mean, I'm solving in very few strokes the big problem of immigration. I think there is going to be a lot of tension hemispherical. And frankly, I mean, the rest, Latin America counts for the United States. But Trump is in a different wavelength. And I think that this messianic facet, many times we forget because we think of him as the negotiator, as the art of the deal. Yes, the art of the deal, but from positions that have nothing of rationality, nothing of playing on clear interest. No, there is making statements, changing in this kind of presentation that is not seen that much because of all the paraphernalia, all the histrionics that he puts in what he does.
Anna, before our time is up, I'd like to speak briefly about Europe, because also we mentioned diplomacy and actions in general. And I'd like to focus on a point. So we know Mr. Trump previously questioned America's commitment to NATO and suggested he might not defend historical allies. Do you think, or how should Europe respond to the possibility of an isolationist White House?
I don't think. I mean, yes, of course, it's not exactly isolationist. What Trump has is this shop bookkeeper approach. He has this idea that allies have been just free riding on United States monies, and of course this is particularly crude and in NATO. But we have seen that he has said that he wants tariffs on Taiwan products. I think that the problem with Trump, paradoxically, is being the biggest problem is for allies. How to react when you are an ally. If you have a good relationship but not an alliance, and this is the difference with the Quad. The Quad is not an alliance, and for Trump, who is someone that doesn't understand law, just has no sensitivity for institutions and has no sensitivity for links, it's much better to have a relationship but not being married through an alliance. I think that the Europeans, we have to understand that in some issues Trump is right. I mean, we have to spend in defense. Full stop. That's absolutely a must. Having said that, right now we are going a crisis by the invasion of Ukraine that is for us is existential. And right now we need the United States. We cannot improvise. Defense is not something that you do like that and you have your defense. The Europeans have to negotiate the support of the United States with the commitment to spend, and Spain is one of the laggards, to Spain whatever it takes. I'm not sure if 5% is the figure, but of course much more than we are spending right now.
If I could say, President Trump is the first United States president who is a convicted felon. This is what the courts of law in the United States have deemed just days before his assuming the office again. He operates with allies and partners like a crime boss family, essentially looking at alliances as a protection network and saying essentially you need to pay up, you need to do more for us. Look at the example of Saudi Arabia when he said that Saudi Arabia is going to invest $600 billion. He said, I want to make it $1 trillion. Why not round it up to $1 trillion? Now that's a style of operating that actually can get some results, but does it build trust? Does it build confidence? Does it build stability in the international system? And my answer is no, it does not. So there will be results, but will they be lasting and sustainable results that benefit other countries, including countries in the Middle East, and benefit the United States in a win-win scenario? And that's where I think, if anyone can make a prediction, I think there'll be more win-lose scenarios under the Trump administration because of his modus operandi.
On this, I absolutely fully agree. You cannot do international relations on the short term. You need the long-term relations. And frankly, going against alliances just jeopardizes the United States projection, because the United States projection is the projection of autoritas, not just potestas, but autoritas, because the allies follow. And frankly, this can be, this has even a dollar money. And this is something that the United States is going to realize, that, of course, he's not the only one. He is not the only boss around. And that today, any country has options. Yes. And it's not just China or the United States, but it's India, it's the Emirates, it's the Gulf. For instance, in Africa, you see it extremely well. And the United States is being put in the back burner because you cannot trust them.
That was a great conversation. I would like to thank you both for joining this session.